Hey guys, since the pre-patch is here, I wanted to do a video going over some of the important things about Warlocks headed into the pre-patch. I also wrote the Icy Veins guides for Warlocks in the pre-patch, and I'll link it in the description if you want a written version. I'll go over some major Warlock changes to start. I won't go over every single Warlock change since there's a shit ton, but mainly the huge changes that you probably should know about, like for example, you no longer have to deal with soul shards. I mean, you do, but soul shard farming will never happen again, but more on that in a little bit. After that, I'll briefly touch on Reforging, how it works, and what you should be looking to reforge. Then I'll touch on talent builds and rotations for each spec. I'll try not to make this a super long video, just something that I hope guides you comfortably through the pre-patch. As always, I'm not 100% correct about everything, so leave a comment if you have something to say. I've been playing Cata for a couple years now on private servers to get ready for Cata, as well as I've leveled a few times on the beta. I personally love Cata, and I honestly think you guys will as well. All that being said, we won't know for sure about anything until Blizzard launches their game, so everything is subject to change in this video, and I'll update you as soon as we learn more. Before we start, please follow the channel so you know when I post more Cata videos, as I'll be posting a ton throughout the expansion as I do for every expansion, and please like the video so I know you liked it. Also, I'll be streaming a ton of Cataclysm as well. I've recently joined Progress for Cata and I can't wait to be blasting away, so feel free to check out the stream over at twitch.tv/KirksVibes. Alright, to start, I wanted to touch on some major changes. Like I said, this won't cover every change, but rather some important ones that you should probably know about. If you guys would like me to do a video going over every Warlock change, then let me know in the comments. So to start, you'll notice that you have a new stat called Mastery. This does something different depending on what spec you are. For Affliction, Mastery increases all shadow dot damage you deal. As Demonology, this stat increases how much damage not only your demons do, but how much you do when you're in meta form. As Destro, Mastery increases all fire damage you deal. The more Mastery you have, the more it buffs the damage for all three specs under their circumstances. The next big one up is one of the most impactful and noticeable amazing changes to our soul shards. In the past, you've had to farm soul shards and keep 1,000 on you. Instead, how shards work in Cataclysm is that you can only have a max of 3 shards. You gain these by one of 3 ways. You can gain soul shards by the typical drain soul way that you guys have been doing this whole entire time, except instead of 1 shard, you recharge all 3 of your soul shards. The other main way is to use this new spell called Soul Harvest. This is a 9-second channel that not only gives you your 3 soul shards back, but also heals you for 45% of your health. Note that this cannot be used in combat, only outside of combat. And the last way is to kill something with Shadow Burn. If you do, you get all 3 shards back. Another note about soul shards is that you really only use soul shards for a new ability called Soul Burn, which buffs some of your other spells. For example, if you use Soul Burn, your next Soul Fire is instant. If you Soul Burn, your next pet cast is instant. If you Soul Burn and use your Demonic Gateway, you get a movement speed afterwards. The list goes on, but I'll let you discover the rest for yourself. The point is that you don't need to spend soul shards on summoning, hellstones, pets, or anything else. Next up is another stone, your Soul Stone. This does the same thing it always has, except now it can be used as a battle res. Simply meaning if someone dies in raid, you can use your Soul Stone on them after they die and you'll be able to battle res them. Much like the Druid's Battle Res Rebirth for those that aren't understanding what a Battle Res is. Next up is an ability for all specs to get used to, and that's Shadow Flame. An otherwise worthless ability in Wrath of the Lich King, this was significantly buffed in Cataclysm and is so good that you actually use this on single target encounters. Meaning you should get used to fighting in melee range or close to it, like 8 yards or whatever the range for Shadow Flame is. This isn't a game-breaking ability for those that prefer to be in range, but I wanted to mention it because it is in fact a DPS increase. Have fun. Another thing all specs never need to worry about again is the life tap glyph. It was changed and now only reduces your global cooldown of your life tap by half a second, meaning whether you enjoy the gameplay or not, you no longer need a life tap to keep that life tap buff up. Might be a hard habit to break, but you'll do it. Another massive change is Curse of Agony and Curse of Doom are no longer curses and are called Banes. You can only have 1 Bane on the target at a time, meaning you can either have Doom or Agony up. All 3 specs use Bane of Doom unless the boss is going to die within 20 seconds, then you'd use Agony. Doom also got a rework as well, so instead of it doing damage at the end of the 60 seconds, it still lasts 60 seconds, but now it does damage every 15 seconds, and whenever it does damage every 15 seconds, it also has a chance to spawn a little imp to pump with you. This now lets you put up Curse of Elements and Bane of Agony or Doom, which is pretty nice. Something that is very important to know is that your demons not only do much more damage now, but they also have much more synergy with your talents. For example, Destrolock Imp damage gives you a chance at an instant cast Soulfire. Demolock's Fell Guards can now Fellstorm for ridiculous amounts of AoE damage, and the Fell Hunter is the most broken pet in the entire game, with its Shadow Bite being significantly buff and does an absolute shit ton of damage. It's so good in fact that you end up using Fell Hunter even as Demonology in pre-patch currently, and even when Cata drops, you'll end up swapping to your Fell Hunter in the opener with something that we call Pet Twisting. More on that in a separate video because you can't do it in the pre-patch because you need to be level 85 for the ability that's going to make us Pet Twist. But yeah, your demons mean much more to you now than they have in the past. And while we're talking about specs, all the specs got reworked, and while playing roughly the same in terms of rotation, some specs, largely Demonology, will surprise you. In the past, only brought for Demonic Pact, Demonology actually does a stupidly high amount of damage on both single target and AoE. Well, rather they should be doing a ton of damage based on the private server information, but once again, you never know what Blizzard servers are going to look like. There are a ton of changes per spec that I'm not going to go over now, but some major ones are, as Demonology, you can channel Hellfire while moving, which feels fantastic. You have Hand of Gul'dan finally, which also refreshes your Immolate, meaning no more Immolate cast after the initial one. Metamorphosis is broken and allows you to snapshot all your mastery you have when you pop meta, and will remain on you even after swapping the mastery gear off. This leads to some interesting gameplay that not everyone is a big fan of. Due to how powerful this method is as Demonology, you have to carry an entire set of gear on you that has as much mastery as you can possibly have, swap the gear on, pop Metamorphosis, and then swap your normal raid gear back on and blast. Unless Blizzard changes something about this will be more or less required by Demo Warlocks to be able to parse. I'm personally not a huge fan of it myself, but of course I'll be doing it because I like the min-max. Oh, and one more thing about Demonology is the infamous Demonic Pact. Two things about it actually. The first one is it now increases your spell power by 10% rather than 10% of your Demo Lock's spell power. The second part is that the Ellie Shamans also bring the same exact buff with Elemental Wrath. This is great because it frees us to be able to swap to Affliction for those multi-target fights. Some quick Affliction changes, which are the biggest ones, is Soul Swap. This allows you to pretty much copy paste all your dots from one target and put it on another. And when glyphed, which you will have it glyphed if you're Affliction, it will leave the dots on the previous target and the new target. So you pretty much instantly get your dots up on both targets. It's pretty dope, and part of the reason why Affliction is the undisputed king of multi-target cleave fights. Another huge thing Affliction got was Soul Burn, Seed of Corruption. This allows you to use that special Soul Burn ability we talked about earlier with Seed of Corruption, which makes it so when your seed blows up, it puts corruption on every single mob that it hit. It's super dope. Another cool one is the new talent called Jinx, which makes your Curse of Elements an AoE ability, meaning that when you curse the elements, it applies it up to 15 targets within 20 yards of your target. So it's pretty nice for when you actually need to use it. All right, now let's talk about Reforging. In short, Reforging allows you to take a piece of gear and reforge, for example, the crit that's on that piece and turn 40% of that crit into another stat. This is phenomenal because you can turn all that unwanted crit into hit rating or whatever stat you want, which, as you know, is very good. I'm not going to go into detail about what to reforge and when. I'll save that for another video, but for now, just know that you can and should be reforging your crit into hit so that you can obtain your hit rating. Then after your hit cap, you can reforge it into your soft cap for haste or whatever else you want. Now for the juicy part, talent builds and rotations. First off, before I show you, one big change in Cata is that you have to have 31 points in one tree before putting points into another tree. So you won't see any deep hybrid builds in Cata. I'll go over what I think is the best build for each spec and then go over the rotation, starting with Affliction. Please note that none of our sims work right now, so once again, this could all be subject to change, and I will update you if so. So this is what I feel like is the best Affliction spec for pre-patch. You'll obviously have most of your points in Affliction tree, leaving out Improved Howl of Terror, Curse of Exhaustion, and Improved Fear, since they have close to no use in PvE content. After that, you'll put 3 points in the Dark Arts and the Demonology tree, since this will increase your Fellhunter's Shadow Bite by 15%. After that, put your last few points into Shadow and Flame. As for Glyphs, your prime glyph should be Glyph of Corruption, Haunt, and Unstable Affliction. For major glyphs, use Glyph of Soul Swap, as this allows you to keep your dots on the target when you Soul Swap rather than removing them. Glyph of Life Tap, and Shadow Bolt. For minor glyphs, it doesn't matter, so just use whatever. For the Affliction Rotation, I like to start rather close to the boss, or I'll run in while casting my instant cast dots after the fight starts. This is to use Shadow Flame, which as I said earlier was buffed from Lich King and does decent single target damage. Do not worry about this if you're worried about dying from being in melee range though. Next, of course, make sure you have your Fell Hunter out. You have Fell Armor and Soul Link on, and whatever consumables you're deciding to use. Precast Shadow Bolt and then send your Fell Hunter in to attack the boss. After that, put up Curse of Elements if nobody else is doing it. You won't have to do this much, as Assassination Rogues, Unholy DKs, Boomkin, and of course other Warlocks can do it. After that, pop your cooldowns and use your Doom Guard. This does an insane amount of damage. Doom Guard cannot be lusted, but it does snap your spell power, so you want to make sure you have as much as spell power as possible before using it. After that, use Haunt and keep this debuff on the boss 100% of the time. And then Corruption, Bane of Doom, Unstable Affliction, and then Shadow Flame when you're in melee range. And then spam Shadow Bolts. I like to use Soul Burn to get an instant cast Soulfire out at this point. However, I have no clue if it's worth it. I feel like it is, but I guess we'll find out soon. That's definitely feels craft on that though. After that, keep your dots up and spam Shadow Bolts by refreshing your dots and keeping Haunt on the boss until you hit execute range. Once you do that, then you'll do the same thing you've been doing this whole entire time, but replace Shadow Bolt with Drain Soul. Keep your dots up and Drain Soul until the boss is dead. For Demonology, this will be your spec. Once again, 31 points in the demo, not only because you have to, but because the talents are actually really strong for Demonology. Blizzard did a very good rework with this spec. You'll pick up everything besides Aura of Foreboding, which can have some niche uses, but you won't need it. Improved health funnel, since you won't be healing your demon much thanks to the 1 point you put in the Fell Synergy. You do not need 2 points in this because 50% chance is more than enough to keep your demon alive. After that, put 3 points into Shadow and Flame for the 12% damage on your Incinerate or Shadow Bolt if you're using that spec, and then 2 points into Improved Immolate for the 10% damage on your Immolation. Note that at 85, there's an alternative spec that is much like this, but instead of incinerating, you Shadow Bolt. It's slightly less single target damage than Incinerate, but it's slightly more on multi-target. I personally do not plan to be using the Shadow Bolt build unless something comes up in the real Blizzard servers and it actually surpasses Incinerate on single target. I just personally plan to only use Incinerate as I only care about single target, because if there's a multi-target situation, I'll just dual spec over to Affliction. As for the Demonology Glyphs, the prime glyph should be Glyph of Immolate, Metamorphosis, and Incinerate. Glyph of Felguard has some uses if you're doing dungeons, but it's not that helpful on single target since you will be using your Fel Hunter. The major glyphs should be Life Tap, Soul Link, and Soul Stone, and the minor glyphs don't matter. Pick whatever you want. For the Demonology Rotation, make sure you have your Fel Hunter out, Fel Armor, and Soul Link active, and whatever consumes you're using. Like I said earlier, Fel Hunter does significantly more single target damage than the Felguard, and you don't have the pet twist in the pre-patch since you don't have Demon Soul until level 85. However, if you want to get in the habit of pet twisting, feel free to do so. Once again, I like to start rather close to the boss if possible, or I just use Demon Leap, which actually does pretty good damage, so don't feel bad about using it. Once again, this is just to use Shadow Flame since it was buffed from Lich King and it does pretty good damage. Not only that, but you'll be using Immolation Aura as well, which makes you need to be in melee, right? Now, for those mastery swapping pre-pool to benefit from the mastery snapshot while in Metamorphosis, you will put your mastery gear on, press meta, and then put your normal gear back on before the pool timer hits 0. Be careful, because if someone pulls early, you will get stuck with this mastery gear on, and that's going to suck. There are many add-ons to help you with this, and I think even the Blizzard default game lets you do it now, but I don't know. I personally use Item Rack, and then I make 2 sets of gear, then I set keybinds for it. Anyway, put your mastery gear on, press meta, then put your normal gear back on. The pull timer is starting to get close to 0, then you precast your Incinerate. After that, immediately put up a Curse of Elements if nobody else is doing it. You won't have to do this too much, as Assassination Rogues, Unholy DKs, Boomkins, and of course other Warlocks can do this as well. After that, pop your cooldowns and use your Doom Guard. Once again, this does an insane amount of damage and cannot be lusted, but it does snapshot your spell power, so you want to make sure that you have as much spell power as possible when you press your Doom Guard. After that, Demon Leap to the boss if you're not already in melee range, and then Immolation Aura, Hand Gul'dan, Immolate, Bane of Doom, Corruption, and then Shadow Flame. After that, spam Incinerate until you need to reapply your dots, or to cast Hand of Gul'dan or Shadow Flame. Note that you do not need to refresh Immolate since Hand of Gul'dan does it for you. Since we're not worried about pet twisting right now, I like to use Soulburn to get an instant cast Soulfire out at this point. Once again, no clue if that's worth it, but whatever. I feel like it is. It's just a free Soulfire. I like it. Once the boss is at 25%, replace Incinerate with Soulfire due to the Decimation talent in the execute range, and continue your rotation. Lastly, for Destro, this will be your spec. You'll be taking everything in the Destro tree besides Backlash, since you shouldn't be taking any melee hits, Aftermath, since it's ass, and Improved Searing Pain, since you won't be Searing Paining much at all. Your leftover points will go into Improved Corruption in the Affliction tree, since you'll be keeping up Corruption full time, and then you put your last 2 points into Dark Arts in the Demo tree, as this will reduce your cast time of your Imp's Firebolt. As for the Destro Glyphs, the prime glyphs will be Glyph of Conflag, Immolate, and Imp. You can also swap the Imp one for Incinerate if you like as well. Once again, there's no sims to tell which is better. They're probably close. I'm just going to run the Imp one. We'll find out tomorrow or like the next day. Your major glyphs should be Life Tap, Soul Link, and Soul Stone, and once again, your minor glyphs do not matter. For the Destro Rotation, make sure you have your Imp out, Fel Armor, and Soul Link active, and whatever consumes you're using. Once again, I like to start rather close to the boss if possible. This is use Shadow Flame, which is buffed and does really good single target damage. If you're worried about dying for whatever reason, then just forego this and sit at ranged. Next, precast Soulfire and then put up Curse of Elements if nobody else is doing it. You do not need to put this up if you have Assassination Rogue, Unholy DK, or a Boomkin, or of course if another Warlock is doing it. After that, pop your cooldowns and use your Doom Guard. This still does an insane amount of damage and snapshot your spell power even as Destro. After that, Bane of Doom, Immolate, Corruption, then Conflag. Shadow Flame if in melee range, and then use Chaos Bolt. Keep it on cooldown. Fill with Incinerate while waiting to reapply dots or to use Chaos Bolt and Conflag. Use Shadowburn once the boss is below 20% health, since that is now the only time you can use it. Shadowburn was reworked to 1, do a lot of damage, and 2, can only be used if the target is below 20% health. Now, one more thing about Destro is Soulfire. You'll be using this a lot since your Empowered Imp talent gives your Imp a chance to give you a free instant cast Soulfire whenever he's using his Firebolt. Not only that, but thanks to the talent Improved Soulfire, whenever you Soulfire, it increases your damage by 8%. For this reason, you want to make sure 1, you use your Soulfire procs whenever possible, as soon as you see them. 2, cast Soulfire every 20 seconds, or 3, use your Soulburn to get an instant cast Soulfire off if you have the shards for it. Lastly, before we go, some quick notes about leveling in the pre-patch. I don't want to go into depth because I have a leveling guide coming out soon from 1 to 85, and I'll go into much more depth there. But if you choose a level lock from 1 to 80, I just want to tell you that Destro is absolutely cracked for leveling. Literally up until like level 82, I'm actually killing mobs before they reach me. Occasionally a mob might touch me. It's pretty unbelievable, and to be honest, leaves me with hope that Destro will be a good rating spec, but you know, copium. But we'll see. Affliction self-healing was butchered because Soul Life no longer does what it used to do. It now got a huge rework that is actually shit, and now only has a 50% chance to heal you for 2% of your health when your corruption deals damage. That being said, Aff is still really cozy, to be honest. You're able to multi-pool still, just not nearly as many mobs, and obviously your self-healing is cheeks now. Demonology is fine to level, it's just much slower than the other two specs, but yeah, I just wanted to touch on them and tell you to trust me and go Destro while leveling, and just thank me later. And of course, if you're leveling in the new world, Rested XP is a fantastic guide to route you through all the changes. It gives you the fastest way to level if you're looking to level fast, or to be honest, just not get lost like I do. I know the routes, the arrow tells me where to go, I can just shut my brain off and enjoy the new world and the new view, and just vibe out. If you want, I'll put a link in the description, and you can use code CRICS to get it cheaper. Well, that's it for this one, guys. I know I can add a lot more, but I've already taken a ton of your time. I'm sure stuff will change, and once again, I'll update you guys if so. If you liked the video, please hit the thumbs up and follow the channel. Leave a comment if you feel like I missed something or have any other questions. You can also hit up my stream at twitch.tv/CRICSvibes or my Discord if you want to know more or meet some like-minded people. Good luck in the pre-patch, my friends, and I'll see you soon. Peace.